Shalom Talmidim. In this video, we're going to talk about suffixes, suffixim. I'll give you an overview of some of the important elements about suffixes in terms of their form, and then in terms of their function, and some important things related to that. And then I'll give you a couple of examples. So, suffixes are, let me just first say, the word suffix is used inconsistently in the textbook, or at least maybe I should say it's used in a way that's somewhat confusing. So in this chapter, chapter 6, she talks about pronominal suffixes, or suffixes that are contracted pronouns. She doesn't use that language actually, but it's a suffix and it works as similar to a pronoun. Attaches to different words for different reasons. Later, in a couple of chapters, she's going to talk about another contracted pronoun that she's also going to call a suffix, which I think is just confusing. So the other thing that she's going to talk about, I'm going to refer to as an affix. And we'll talk about that at the intensive, so you don't have to worry about that now. But I just want to flag that for you. The word suffix is used to describe two different things in the textbook. But for now, suffixes is the right word. And a suffix, in terms of where it's attached to the word, works the same in Hebrew as it does in English. A suffix in English is like the suffix ism, right? It's added to the end of a word, or ology or olatry. These are suffixes that attach to the end of a word that, well, in English at least, they make that word a certain kind of thing. So ology means the study of something. So biology is the study of bio, is the study of life. Science, those sorts of things. I'm not a scientist. But anyway, you get the idea. It's something that's attached to the end of a word, in both English and in Hebrew. And in Hebrew, the suffix, the pronominal suffix, is, if it's attached to a word, it is the last thing on the word. Nothing can attach after a suffix on a word in Hebrew. So I've written the paradigm from page 47 here on the board, and I just want to walk through it briefly and tell you some of the things that I notice about it. The first thing, which I mentioned in the notes and explanations page as well, is I want you to go in and write the pronouns, the independent personal pronoun, next to each and every suffix on page 47, so that you can see and appreciate the relationship between the two forms. Because a suffix, again, is simply a contracted, independent personal pronoun. And they're contracted in certain ways. But the pronouns contract in different ways to make different things. So the pronoun contracts to make a suffix in these ways. The pronoun contracts in different ways to make what I referred to earlier as an affix. And then it contracts in other ways still to make another thing called a prefix. But here are suffixes. So the first person common singular pronoun is ani. Ani. The contracted form, that is a suffix, which is a pronoun referring to me, is ni. Right? You can see I've color-coded this whole chart so that you can see what salient part of the pronoun is reflected in the suffix, its corresponding suffix. So you can see that all the way down there are red parts of the pronoun which are then reflected in the suffix. Isn't that helpful? The Hebrews were brilliant. These kinds of things help us to remember the forms because they all rhyme. Okay, so ani becomes ni. Ata, which is second masculine singular, you, the comets is the only thing that's retained, but it rhymes. So you'll see that a tav is here the kind of salient sound of the second masculine singular pronoun, as well as the second feminine singular pronoun, at. That T sound is a very strong consonant sound, but also on the plural side, we have aten is the second feminine plural, and atem, the second masculine plural pronoun. They all have a tav in them. And all of the corresponding suffix forms replace that tav with a kaf. So you go from ata to cha, from at to just simply ch, right? You kind of have to hawk a loogie for that one when you're pronouncing it, but from at. Then atem, y'all, guys, becomes chem, and aten becomes chen. Okay, so even though it's just the vowel here that gets added into the suffix, they still rhyme. That tav and that kaf are very similar. So, same with here. So the thing to remember about the second person suffixes and the second person pronouns is that they all have the same letter as their salient letter. The suffixes have a kaf in the second person, the pronouns have a tav in the second person. Okay, and that's masculine and feminine, singular and plural. Okay, moving along, we have who. The third person singular forms are actually the least connected between the two forms, but still there is a relationship. Who, you take the vav from who, and that becomes your third masculine singular suffix. This slash mark here is the difference between the singular, the suffix that's attached to a singular noun, or the suffix that's attached to a plural noun. Those are the two charts on page 47 in the textbook. On the left-hand side is a suffix attached to a singular noun or to an inseparable preposition, beit or lamed. And then on the other side is a suffix on the right attached to a plural noun or to most of the separable prepositions like el and al are two common ones. The plural form, or the form that's attached to a plural noun rather, the suffix is not necessarily plural, but if it attaches to a plural noun, it has the yod, that's the extra yod, is the sign of the plural. From im, which is the plural noun ending. Okay, I'll get into that a little bit more in a second. But I just want you to associate these pronouns with their corresponding suffix. And finally, he, you see the hey of he corresponds to the hey of the suffix. So when it's attached to a singular noun or to an inseparable preposition, you have the comet's hey ending, and this hey has what's called a mapik. It's not a dagesh. You'll recall from week 1, guttural letters like the hey cannot take a dagesh. They can't be doubled. Hebrew doesn't want to say right? That's too Jim Carrey-esque, too hard for normal people to pronounce. And so it's just a comet's hey, but this mapik is signifying I'm a suffix. I'm a third feminine singular suffix. That's what it's telling you. And then when it's attached to plural nouns or to inseparable prepositions that take this yod between them, between the word and the suffix, it's hey comets instead of comets hey. And there's no mapik because the hey isn't all there hanging out by its own on the end. It has the vowel to follow it. And another thing that this comet's hey does is it differentiates this hey from all kinds of other heys on the end of a word. Lots of words end with hey. In fact, lots of words end with comet's hey. And you'll learn about all the other things a hey on the end of a word can mean, particularly a comet's hey, later on in the course. But this mapik is saying, I'm not cohortative, I'm not directional, I'm not any of these other things. I'm a third feminine singular suffix. So the same is true here. I won't go through all of them, but anachnu becomes nu, atem, chem, aten, chen, and so on and so forth. These last two, when attached to a singular noun, it's am, which you'll see relates to hem, am, but then wonderfully in the plural, when it's attached to a plural noun, it's just exactly the same as the suffix or the pronoun itself. There's no change. Hem, hen, hen, which is delightful. It's so helpful.